Hello, and welcome to a bright and early edition of It's Just Me. Of course, I'm Brent Fox. I just wanted to make sure that I discussed the matchup between Abdullah Mason and Prince Albert Bell today. Of course, today is Saturday, July 4th, 2026. So, basically, this matchup is taking place in Cleveland, and it is Ohio versus Ohio, which, of course, Abdullah Mason is from Cleveland, Albert Bell is from Toledo. So, that interstate matchup should actually just be a good dynamic itself. Shouts out to Junior the Truth and Ohio Runs Boxing. Now, the matchup between these two gentlemen should be a better matchup than what most casuals are actually giving it. Most casuals think that Abdullah Mason is going to just run through Prince Albert Bell and probably end the fight in the third or fifth round. I don't think that that is actually even close to remotely true at all. I think that Prince Albert Bell has a very deep tool bag, pause, that he could actually utilize and may be able to upset Abdullah Mason with. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the actual matchup and what my thoughts are about it. So, I'll start off with Prince Albert Bell, of course, hailing from Toledo, Ohio. Now, to most people that follow boxing pretty closely, they know Prince Albert Bell from the 130-pound division, where he was featured on top rank cards in previous years. Now, he was actually featured in an OTX card not too long ago, where he actually got a TKO stoppage of an opponent. I believe the last name of Caracia, and he did so by being able to effectively throw sharp punches to the body and then eventually ending the fight with the fighter retiring in the corner, or the corner actually waved it off, excuse me. So I think just because he has maybe single digit KOs out of all of his fights, that means that he is either, well, we're going to use that notorious term, pillow fisted, or has no real power. I don't think that that is actually true. He would not be winning as many fights as he's actually won if he were that pillow fisted. I will say that as far as maybe a power level goes, Albert Bell throws sharp and very accurate punches. So it's not going to be anything that's just going to be a one and done type punch or something of that nature. I think that those sharp, accurate shots will take their toll, and in some cases, actually cause the opponent not to be able to continue the fight. I do not look for that in this particular matchup, but what I am looking for out of Prince Albert Bell is the following. Okay, so in order for him to particularly win this fight, I think that establishing his range by utilizing his jab is extremely important. And then also, because he is primarily an orthodox fighter and Abdullah Mason is a southpaw, it is imperative that he makes sure that his lead foot is outside of the lead foot of Abdullah Mason. The reason that that is particularly important is because if he has his foot outside of the lead foot of Abdullah Mason, he should be able to utilize his jab properly. What that also does is it causes Abdullah to exit one way, which is basically going to be to the right of Prince Albert Bell. The reason that is important is because if you constantly have someone moving, especially to the right, then and he's a southpaw, then it would probably be a lot easier to catch him with a lead right hand or possibly a right hook. Now, I think that it is also very, very important that Albert Bell is the one that actually establishes the pace in the fight. And what I basically mean by that is you cannot allow Abdullah Mason to just basically come in, um, throw dominating combinations and then not receive a response, or allow Abdullah Mason just to come in, period, and then try to establish himself. And what I mean by that is just basically controlling the fight by throwing throwing his jab, making sure that Albert Bell freezes, and then if he does freeze, then of course he can set up other combinations. Excuse me, to just kind of make sure that he controls the fight. So I would probably look for that from Albert Bell to make sure that he is able to keep that lead foot outside of Abdullah Mason's lead foot, and to be able to just try to control the pace of the fight. And I think effective countering, especially with someone of a different stance, is extremely important. I think that um, you have to basically set traps for Abdullah Mason. What that basically means is if you're setting a trap, then that means that you've noticed a habit that your opponent actually has. It could be a situation to where that opponent will throw very rapid combinations, but they'll drop their hands at the end. Or sometimes they'll charge in too aggressively and just lean over, just lean a little bit too much forward, ever so slightly, and then you should be able to counter off that, basically throwing hooks and then uppercuts shortly after. So I would actually look for Albert to use his experience in the ring to try to first, of course, set the tone with the jab, and then establish the right hand just based off of that particular jab. I look for sharp, accurate counter punching. I look for sharp, accurate body punching as well. Now, I would fully expect Albert Bell to try to utilize his reach and height advantage against him as well. And I think it's very, very important, because he's the older fighter, to establish a good clinch after combinations have been thrown. So, and what that basically does is it just kind of throws off the timing and rhythm of your opponent, and it more importantly frustrates them to where they feel like they're not going to be able to get off what they need to get off as well. So I would actually look for Prince Albert Bell to do that. Now, for Abdullah Mason, I think that it's very important to not do what Xander Zayas did last week, and that just means basically just try to come forward and establish dominance. I think that's a huge mistake. I think that you actually walk in to quite literally a boxing disaster if you do that. I think that Prince Albert Bell is way too cunning and way too resourceful for someone just to come charging in and not have to pay tax on it. In other words, I think that if Abdullah Mason comes in and he, tries to be aggressive, I think that Albert Bell is going to effectively counter him and could possibly establish tone in that fight and make Abdullah Mason think twice. And if that happens, then most of the time, if you have somebody thinking twice about what they're doing, you take advantage of that, and then you can kind of dominate the fight. But I think that if Abdullah Mason actually uses a strategy which is just kind of like an in and out type strategy, like stick and move basically, if he is able, because he's going to have to come in anyway because he has a height and reach disadvantage, I think that it's very important that he utilizes lateral movement and throws off the timing also of Prince Albert Bell. I think it's very important to make sure that you establish your own pace, and then that, of course, you throw off the pace of your opponent. Now, him being a southpaw would probably give him a natural advantage because with orthodox fighters versus southpaws, as an orthodox fighter, you feel like you have to do everything pretty much backwards. And most of the time, the jab is not there if that outside foot is not there. And there are going to be cases to where that outside foot is not going to be there. Most of the time, the more effective combinations with southpaws are usually going to be a left hook, right hand type combination, or a left hook, right uppercut type combination. I think that those particular things are effective against southpaws, but I think with Abdullah Mason, if he is able to just take and turn Albert Bell constantly, he will be able to actually throw his rhythm off. I think that by utilizing angles, you can set up so many other things like excuse me, like countering opportunities just in case Bell tries to uh, move in aggressively or step with Abdullah Mason. I think that if he tries to step with Abdullah Mason, I think Mason is actually clever enough, or his ring IQ is high enough to understand that, and he could also have him walking into combinations such as a right hook, straight left hand. Um, I also think for Abdullah Mason, if he is able to utilize a body attack to, excuse me, um, just basically punish a long, thin frame of Prince Albert Bill, I think that that primarily will slow him, or effectively, excuse me, slow him down. And with that being said, if he does slow him down, then that means a lot of trouble for Bell. And of course, these casuals are already talking about his chin being too high up in the air. I have not seen that lately, but sometimes old habits do die hard. And if that's the case, to where the body's broken down and then we're just taking chances that we don't need to take, unfortunately, there is going to be a situation where he gets caught, and that could actually decide the fight. I'm not going to say that Abdullah Mason is going to knock out Prince Albert Bell, but I will say that if he is able to implement a game plan to where he is constantly turning and moving Prince Albert Bell, I think that that really goes in Abdullah Mason's favor. And as a matter of fact, I am picking Abdullah Mason to actually win this particular fight. Now, I don't think that it's going to be by some unrealistic dominating stoppage or anything of that nature. I think that at best it's probably going to be a unanimous decision. Realistically, I think it probably would be a split decision. I think that there are going to be some rounds that Prince Albert Bell is going to really surprise some people and look very good in. And in the meantime, I think that Abdullah would probably be clever enough to try to adjust to what Prince Albert Bell is actually doing, and then make sure that he dominates some rounds himself. Um, I probably would have it 7-5 Abdullah Mason. I would be very, very surprised if Abdullah were to dominate this fight. I would also be very surprised, or pleasantly surprised, rather, if Albert Bell actually wins this particular fight as well. But again, my official decision, if you were just forcing me, I would say Abdullah Mason, of course, by split decision, not unanimous, not by a landslide, none of that. I think that it would be by split decision because Prince Albert Bell will have a very good showing or account for himself in this particular matchup. So that's what I have. Thank you all so much for tuning in to It's Just Me. Of course, I'm Brent Fox, and I'll see you guys next time.